Dear evening traveler, there is a place on the lands of Katiopa that scarcely appears on maps, a kingdom born between the tides, woven of reflections, of pathways of shadow and light. They say that one day a king whispered a vow so pure that only the heart of the lagoons could hear it. And from that breath, a daughter was born. Tonight, I invite you to enter this floating world. Let yourself glide gently, breathe slowly, settle in comfortably. The story begins. Nayélè, Princess of the Lagoons. There existed, on the edge of the great ocean, a kingdom that old maps struggled to place, a world woven of arms of water and floating roots. They called it Tekuma, the land of lagoons. Here, water did not separate people, it connected them. Villages rose on suspended islets, and bridges braided of luminous fibers intertwined like vines. The houses, light and open, breathed with the sea. The woods sang beneath the wind, the roofs filtered the light like nacre baskets. The elders would say, "Here, water sees, water listens, water remembers." In Tekuma, time did not run, it flowed. Children learned to read reflections before books, to listen to empty shells, to hear voices from before. Even footsteps were slower, more supple, as if not to awaken the spirits who slept in the deep waters. The kingdom was not vast, but it was ancient, and in the heart of this fluid world stood a palace, or rather, a refuge suspended between sky and lagoon. Built in a spiral around a great mangrove tree, it gently swayed with the tides. The walls, made of woven bark and solar pearls, seemed to capture evening light only to offer it back at dawn. There lived Queen Naye with amber eyes, and King Tembe, whose silences were worth 1,000 songs. An entire people loved them, as one loves an ancient fire whose warmth never truly goes out. But this kingdom, as gentle and beautiful as it was, carried a hidden murmur, a lack, a discreet void lurking behind smiles and moon festivals. For many seasons the queen had not borne a child, and the waters, once so near, seemed to drift away, just enough that the elders fell a little more silent each night. It had been 7 tidal seasons since silence settled into the high chambers of the palace. Queen Naye held her head high, always adorned in her solar ornaments, just as beautiful beneath flowing palm silk fabrics. But sometimes her eyes lingered just a little too long on other people's children. She turned toward the horizon for no reason at all. And most of all, she avoided reflections. King Tembe said nothing. He was one who spoke with his hands, with his gaze, with the pauses between words. And when he felt the weight of silence thicken around his queen, he would descend alone toward the edges of the lagoon. That evening, the sky was low. The moon, half hidden, formed a pale scale between the palms. The king walked for a long time along the woven wooden bridges until he reached the place called the Eye of Water, a natural curve among the reeds, round like a hollow calabash. There the wind was rare, and the water, black and still, reflected the universe upside down. King Tembe stopped. He did not recite any formula. He whispered simply, "If somewhere an attentive spirit remains, if there remains in you an ear for the people of Tekuma, I offer nothing. But I entrust you a void. May it become light or remain silence." Then he stood up. He did not notice that the reeds barely quivered, nor that the circle of water widened very gently, as if something had just emerged from within. He returned without saying a thing, as always. But that night, a dream descended upon the palace, a dream soft and clear, carried by the sound of the waves. The queen saw a light beneath the water, a shifting form and a voice, neither man nor woman, whisper, "What you seek comes from afar, but it will come, just as foam comes upon stone." 3 moons later, on a morning when the sea seemed asleep and the birds were silent, Queen Naye gave birth to a daughter. She named her Nayélè, which means she who reflects the light without possessing it. Nayélè grew like a breath between 2 worlds. Her eyes were like an abyssal black that changed. When she walked, the birds stopped singing. When she laughed, the fish rose by the docks, as if drawn by a memory too old to recall. She did not speak much, but when she listened, one felt the very air grow softer. The elders said she heard between words, like one hears between 2 waves. Nayélè grew like a poem of salt water. Her skin, bronze warmed by lagoon sun, seemed to drink the light without ever returning a single gleam. Her thick, high braids, tied like crowning roots, held colorful threads woven by her grandmother, each hue a memory. They always seemed to vibrate with an imperceptible breath, as if responding to the wind songs upon the water. Around her neck, necklaces of dried seaweed and tiny amber beads told of days spent listening to the wind by the reeds. She carried herself with calm poise and eyes that seemed to look through things. The people of Tekuma loved her with a silent love. In floating villages, children played at imitating her. At moon festivals, storytellers added her name to their legends, and the queen, Naye, radiated. She had never been so beautiful as since becoming a mother. She dressed in foamy silks, wore droplet-shaped pearls, and wove mist threads into her hair. But it was no longer the same light in her eyes. Love had mixed with something else, with pride, then with certainty. She meant no harm. She only saw what seemed obvious. Her daughter was a miracle, a living jewel. Proof, perhaps, that Tekuma's royal blood rivaled ancient marvels. Gradually, in her speeches, the queen stopped naming the waters. She no longer spoke of spirits or offerings. She spoke of beauty, of lineage, of victory over silence. Then came the day of the Festival of Reflections, celebrated each year at the solstice, when the lagoons shine like infinite mirrors. That year, the queen commanded a ceremony larger than any before. Lanterns were hung above the waters. Silver drums resonated on the shores. Pagines woven of nacre were given to the people. And as Nayélè entered, draped in light, silence was total. Then the queen rose, her arm extended toward her daughter, and declared, "Behold what our world has borne, even daughters of the waters, even ancient depths. None could equal this beauty. Tekuma has surpassed the old." The people applauded. The sky was clear, the sea calm. But at the bottom of the lagoons, something withdrew. The water lost a bit of its light. That evening, the reflections did not respond, and no one noticed. The days that followed the Festival of Reflections felt strange, as if the entire kingdom were holding its breath. At first, it was just small things. The wind no longer moved as before. The birds stayed silent at dawn. and the fishermen's nets came back empty again and again. Then came the true calamities. The waters of the lagoons, once clear as dreams, grew thick and dark. Black veils rose slowly from the depths, sliding between the reeds like memories long buried. Fish began to die by the dozens. The sand clung to bare feet like glue. And the children said they could hear voices beneath the surface, deep, ancient, wounded songs. One night, even the moon turned away. The ink-black sky refused to give its reflection to the waters, and in the stilted homes, dreams became heavy, restless, haunted by invisible presences. Queen Naye saw none of it. She still stood tall, adorned with her proud jewels, still spoke of her daughter's beauty, as if it were proof of the greatness of her blood. She did not know. She did not want to know. But the king remembered. He remembered the night he had stood alone at the edge of the eye of water, whispering a vow into the dark, offering a prayer with no promise. So, once again, quietly, as he had done years before, he went down to the village diviner. The old man was already waiting. His hands were sunk deep into a bowl of damp sand. He asked no questions. His voice came like the tide. What was given with grace has been stained by forgetting. Now it calls for memory and for balance. The waters wished to take back what they once gave. The king bowed his head. He asked in a low voice, "And what if we returned it another way?" The diviner said nothing. He threw a few shells in a circle upon the sand and let the water slowly rise to fill it. A few days later, as Nayélè walked alone by the edge of the lagoon, where the reeds entwine and the water speaks in whispers, she vanished. The servants said they saw her moving away, peaceful, bare-armed, a seashell in her hand. But none saw the bluish figures rising from the water. None heard the cold breath that came just before they passed. The spirits of the water had come for her, not in anger, but with the quiet, unstoppable force of ancient things. And in the deep, the waters closed over her. The silence beneath the water is not empty. It is inhabited. When Nayélè opened her eyes, she was no longer in the world of the living. She floated in a soft, dense light, surrounded by voices with no mouths and gazes with no eyes. All around her, shapes drifted, long and translucent, like winds dressed in water. They did not speak, but they watched her, and then she understood. It was sorrow. The spirits of the lagoons had not come to punish. They had come to be remembered, and their memory carried the taste of salt and time. They led her into a cavern of silence deep in the heart of the waters. There, a circle of elders waited, old as the tides, still as seaweed. They laid their palms upon the liquid floor, and the water vibrated gently around her. But before any judgment could fall, a presence stepped forward, young, curious, different. His name was Selu, Prince of the Clear Waters, born from the confluence of two sacred rivers. He did not look at Nayélè as the others did. He did not see a thief of gifts, nor a daughter of pride. He saw in her the reflection of a broken bond, and perhaps a bridge. He asked to speak, and the elders listened. Take her life, and silence will return. But teach her, and perhaps in her the voice of the waters will live again. Upon the land of men, let her be not a tribute, but a bridge. A whisper rose through the currents. Nayélè said nothing, but her eyes, vast and calm, answered yes. Then the spirits opened the circle, and Selu took her hand. Together they descended, deeper than the bottom of the lagoons, to where the waters keep the lost songs and the voiceless truths. Since Nayélé's disappearance, the palace had lost its reflection. The wind passed without stopping, curtains no longer stirred, and even the morning birds seemed to have changed their route. Queen Naye sat alone for long hours, gaze fixed on the lagoon's troubled blue. Sometimes she whispered her daughter's name, as if speaking to a swiftly fleeing dream. The people remained silent. Here, grief is not cried out, it is breathed. And all of Tekuma carried this slower breath. One evening, as the sky grew heavy with amber and salt clouds, King Tembe approached his queen. He sat beside her, hands upon his knees, and spoke in a voice soft, almost broken. You never knew that Nayélè did not come from you alone, that her laughter, her light, her presence were the fruit of an ancient vow, a word offered to the waters. One evening, by the lagoon's edge, I asked with an open heart, without demanding, and they heard. Nayélè was born of that silent offering. The queen did not answer right away. Her hands trembled just slightly. Then, without raising her eyes, why did you never tell me? Because it was a gentle secret. And because I wanted to believe she came to you naturally, like water comes to the sea. The Queen Naye closed her eyes, and in that silence, all she had never seen opened within her. Pride, words too much spoken, looks that glorify, and that beauty she had praised so much, which now slipped from her like sand through fingers. That night, the queen went down alone to the eye of water. She removed her jewels, unwove her braids, and walked barefoot on the damp earth. Arriving at its edge, she knelt and placed her hands upon the dark water. And she said, I did not know, I did not see. I forgot that we were bound, that what was given to me came from balance, not conquest, that your silence is a language, just as our breath is a song. Take me, take what you gave, but let my daughter return. The water did not answer, but somewhere, in a shell of salt and silence, Selu, the prince of the sacred waters, watched. He had seen change, he had heard the confession, and in his clear water eyes, something unexpected had been born. Perhaps a door. The seasons turned, the lagoon regained its breath, the wind slowly resumed its play among the reeds. But in the heart of the kingdom, a void still floated, the expectation of an echo, a sign, a returning step. Then one morning, without drums, without omens, she was there, Nayélè, standing at the water's edge, feet bare on wet sand, eyes full of silence and sky. She wore neither royal cloth nor jewels, only a tunic of clear foam, and around her neck a simple cord of braided reeds. Yet everything in her had changed. She walked like water flows. She spoke like the wind glides. And when she approached the palace, the birds returned to sing without waiting. The people fell to their knees. The king, tears at the edge of his eyes, stepped forward without a word. And the queen. This time, the queen bowed deeply, not before a daughter, but before balance restored. Nayélè told no one of her initiation. She simply said, "I learned to listen to things that are not spoken. I am here and I am there. And as long as I live, the two worlds will speak." She became the guardian of invisible bridges, the one people came to when tides faltered, when dreams spoke too loudly, when water no longer reflected anything. And sometimes, on certain evenings, she walked to the eye of water. She would sit upon the round stone and remain there for a long time, eyes fixed on the reflection of stars. There, Selu waited, not always visible, but always present. He never spoke. He did not need to. For now, between them, everything was water. Everything was promise. And the elders say that as long as love flows between worlds, no offering is ever lost. If this tale accompanied you like a soft current beneath your skin, if something within you vibrated, remembered, then leave behind a breath, a quiet word, and subscribe so that other hearts may one day find their way to the stories from the deep forests of Katiopa. And if you'd like to revisit this story in your own time, the written PDF version is available. See the description below. Until the next tale, may the river's song guide your dreams.